Let's now turn to the advisory, and ASIC has turned its focus to private credit, releasing a report on the fast-growing $200 billion market here locally. Let's get some further detail. We're joined by Rob Gilmour from Wealth Simplicity. Rob, good to see you again.
Hi Andrew, how are you?
Very well. So clearly ASIC is concerned, particularly in terms of lack of transparency we're seeing and the risks that poses, particularly now more and more retail investors are getting involved.
Well, look, that's right, and I think it's very pertinent that ASIC do have a focus on this sector, and the report that they did release highlighted some issues in a sector which is growing and does need to implement best practice to avoid problems later on, and it rightly highlighted areas around valuation, transparency, fees, and all those sort of things that should be disclosed and should also be there to protect retail investors in what is a very complex sector.
Well, additionally in Australia, perhaps unlike what we see in the States, the concentration here for private credit is very much focused on property.
That's true. It is a growing sector. A lot of it's in property. You're seeing a lot in SME lending. In the US, it's a much more mature market where you are seeing a lot of different sectors tapping private credit, and it's becoming very, very prevalent in the US around corporate loans. So you're seeing probably about 2 to 3% penetration of business loans in Australia compared to 12 to 14% in the US. So it is a much more systemically important industry in the US, and in Australia we've got to make sure that that growth does come with the right protections and controls to ensure it is done sustainably.
I mean, at the same time, we're seeing alarm bells raised in the States. In fact, we heard from Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan referring to the cockroach effect, where there's one, there's many. Well, just work off what he's had to say, and perhaps are the US regulators concerned about this at the same time?
I think he's raising a red flag, and I'm getting the feeling from clients that they are seeing a lot about private credit in the press, the ASIC review, there's scrutiny in financial media, and Jamie Dimon has sort of hit the nail on the head, I think, there in a certain area in the United States where they took a $170 million haircut on an auto trading loan business. And I think you need to put that in context. There's certainly a lot of pockets of private credit that are probably not well understood in the US. If 1 in 8 businesses are tapping this sector, there's less transparency, there's real systemic risk there. But when I look at private credit, would I invest in an auto loan business? Well, I really don't like that underlying credit. I wouldn't be there. Yep. So it does highlight that yes, there's possibly cockroaches in the system there, and that is a real concern.
So locally then, are your clients asking more and more about private credit? If so, what are you telling them, just in terms of what needs to be known, particularly as far as those risks to that underlying credit exposure?
Yeah, look, it's a great asset class, and I think done well, it really does add value to a portfolio in terms of diversification of returns. But like anything, you do need to choose very carefully about what you're getting into, and that's probably an area where I do feel that there will be problems where retail investors are going into areas that they perhaps don't understand the underlying exposures to what they're investing in. So, what's the quality of the credit? Are they exposed to factoring in terms of invoices, or is the security secured against real estate? What's the loan to value ratio? So really sort of understanding what you're investing in and also how you do it. And there's a lot of factors around choosing the right manager and choosing the right exposure, because credit's the type of thing that you have to plan for it to go wrong, and think backwards in terms of how would you protect your capital.
Yeah, so due diligence, particularly as far as the manager is concerned, the loan origination there, also I guess the fees involved as well.
Definitely, and managers do vary across the sector, so you can't taint the whole sector with generalist statements. You really need to look at what the manager's doing. Are they originating the loans themselves? Do they have the team and the resources in place to manage out loans? How are they being paid? I mean, I get very uncomfortable with performance fees in the credit space because it's not really aligning interests of investors to the risk that a manager might be taking. So understanding how they're getting paid, understanding if they've got conflicts of interest, whether they're financing their own deals, and really sort of picking the structures apart as well.
And it just briefly, we're out of time, but you're saying you need to be wary to those funds managed like term deposits, marketed in those terms.
Look, absolutely. And what those funds that you might see advertised, I really don't feel comfortable with what does appear to be a term deposit. Not necessarily that it's about the credit risk, but are investors really being compensated for the risk that they're taking? And I think that is rightfully an area of focus for ASIC in terms of transparency. It is an asset class that can be really great in a portfolio, but it's an area that does require an eye for research to understand what you're getting in and perhaps advice.